Good morning, everyone. Today I want to talk about something that sounds so simple yet holds tremendous power: silence. We often associate success with speaking, asserting, and expressing, but rarely do we associate it with silence. But let me tell you this: be silent and you will get everything in life. In a world full of noise, silence is underrated. Everyone wants to be heard, but very few want to listen. Everyone wants to prove their point, but very few want to understand. Everyone wants attention, but very few want peace. Being silent doesn't mean being weak. It means being in control of your emotions, your words, and your actions. Silence gives you time to think, to reflect, to strategize. While others are busy reacting, the silent ones are planning their next move. Think of the greatest warriors, the most successful entrepreneurs, the wisest philosophers. They knew that not every opinion deserves a response, and not every battle is worth fighting. Silence helps you observe, it helps you read between the lines. It gives you clarity when confusion surrounds you. It makes you powerful in a subtle, quiet way. Because the one who speaks less often has the most to say. When you are silent, you grow, you learn, you sharpen your intuition, you protect your energy, and most importantly, you give life a chance to whisper its secrets to you. Silence is often misunderstood as a lack of confidence or a sign of submission, but in reality it is one of the greatest indicators of inner strength. When a person remains silent in situations where most would react impulsively or emotionally, it shows a profound level of maturity and control. Strength is not always about how loudly you can speak or how forcefully you can argue your point. True strength lies in restraint, in the ability to hold your tongue when your ego is tempted to speak, when you're provoked, or when you feel the overwhelming urge to defend yourself. Silence in these moments reflects discipline. Imagine a storm. The loudest winds are not the most destructive. It's the calm after the storm that reveals what truly remains standing. In the same way, a silent person often appears calm, composed, and unshakable, even when everything around them is chaotic. They are not rattled by opinions, not disturbed by drama, and not eager to prove themselves to anyone. Their strength is rooted in their stability. They know who they are, and they don't need external validation. Being silent also means you're listening, you're analyzing, you're understanding the full picture before making a move. It requires confidence to sit back and let others talk, especially when you know you have something valuable to say. That's why it takes strength, because the ego wants to be heard, but the wise choose to be effective, and effectiveness often begins in silence. Listening is an art that is often forgotten in the noise of constant talking, debating, and expressing. In our desire to be heard, we sometimes forget to truly hear. But those who practice silence and choose to listen rather than speak gain access to an entirely different level of understanding. Listening is not just about being quiet while someone else speaks. It's about giving your full attention, observing their tone, their body language, and even the pauses between their words. When you listen with intention, you gain insights that are often missed by those who are too busy planning their next sentence. True listening builds empathy. It creates deeper relationships because it shows others that you value them. not just their words, but their presence. It allows you to connect on a more meaningful level, because when people feel heard, they feel seen. And in a world where everyone is fighting to be noticed, being someone who listens can be a superpower. It's rare and it's respected. Listening also gives you knowledge. The more you listen, the more you learn. Every person you encounter has a story, a lesson, an experience that you haven't had. And when you take the time to genuinely listen, you expand your own world without even saying a word. While others are talking about what they already know, you're absorbing new ideas, new strategies, and new perspectives. In silence, while you listen, you also give yourself time to process. You don't just hear the surface level content, you start to understand motives, patterns, and the emotions behind the words. You become more aware, more intuitive, and this awareness can guide you to make better decisions, build stronger connections, and navigate challenges with wisdom and patience. Self-control is one of the most valuable qualities a person can possess, and it often begins with mastering the tongue. Words once spoken cannot be taken back. They have the power to build or destroy, to uplift or to wound, to calm or to ignite. In moments of anger, frustration, or emotional intensity, the temptation to lash out or speak impulsively can be overwhelming. But those who have true control over their tongue also have control over their destiny. When you learn to pause before you speak, to think before you respond, you take control of the narrative and refuse to let emotions dictate your actions. It takes strength to hold back a harsh reply when you feel insulted. It takes wisdom to stay quiet when your pride is challenged. Speaking without thinking is easy. It's a reaction. But silence in those moments is a response. It's intentional, it's powerful. Mastering your tongue means you no longer speak just to fill the silence or to win an argument. You speak with purpose. And sometimes, the most purposeful thing you can do is say nothing at all. This kind of discipline doesn't develop overnight. It comes from practice, from falling into the trap of saying too much and learning from the consequences. Over time, you begin to understand that your words should be tools, not weapons. That silence, when used wisely, can communicate more than 1,000 careless words ever could. When you train yourself to resist the urge to react verbally to every situation, you create space to assess. Mastering your tongue also protects your energy. Arguments, especially those that stem from pride or ego, are draining and rarely productive. But when you keep your composure, when you stay silent in the face of provocation, you preserve your inner peace. You don't let others control your mood or your mind. You speak when it's truly necessary and meaningful. And in doing so, your words carry more weight because they are rare, thoughtful, and intentional. Not every reaction needs a response. A truth that, when fully embraced, can transform your life. We often feel compelled to respond immediately to every insult, every criticism, every challenge thrown our way. It's a natural human instinct to defend ourselves, to prove our point, to make sure we are not misunderstood or misrepresented. But in reality, constantly reacting robs us of peace, drains our energy, and keeps us emotionally entangled in battles that are not worth our time. There is incredible power in choosing your silence. When you don't respond to negativity, you take away its fuel. You show that your inner peace is not so easily disturbed. The need to react is often tied to ego, the part of us that wants to be right, to be seen, to be heard, But when you learn to detach from that need, you gain emotional freedom. You realize that your value isn't determined by what others say or think about you, and that you don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. Silence in the face of provocation sends a clear message that you are above the chaos. You are not ignoring the situation, you are choosing to prioritize your peace over proving a point. This doesn't mean you're weak or passive. It means you're wise enough to recognize that some things simply don't deserve your energy. You begin to understand that peace is more powerful than pride, and silence is often more eloquent than words. Moreover, when you don't react impulsively, you maintain control of your own narrative. You give yourself space to think, to understand the full picture, and to respond later, if at all, with clarity and purpose. In that space, you grow. You stop living on autopilot, where every trigger leads to an outburst, and instead you start living intentionally. Not reacting doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your peace than momentary satisfaction. Silence helps you think clearly and act wisely, because it creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, clarity is born. In a fast-paced world filled with constant information, opinions, noise, and pressure to act immediately, silence acts as a filter. It allows you to step back, breathe, and reflect before making decisions that could shape your future. When you're not rushing to react or speak, your mind becomes sharper. You start to see things for what they really are, not just how they appear in the heat of the moment. Clear thinking doesn't come from constant movement or noise, it comes from stillness. When you're silent, your thoughts have room to settle. Just like muddy water becomes clear when left undisturbed, your mind becomes more focused when you allow it the stillness of silence. This clarity leads to wiser choices, decisions that aren't driven by emotion or external pressure, but by calm reasoning and deep understanding. You begin to respond to life with purpose, not panic. Acting wisely requires more than just intelligence. It requires timing, emotional control, and insight. Silence gives you all of that. It puts you in a position of observation where you can evaluate situations from all angles before stepping in. You can notice details that others miss in the rush to speak or act. You can recognize patterns, understand people's motives, and anticipate outcomes more effectively. When you act from a place of silence, your moves are strategic rather than reactive. Silence also protects you from the traps of impulsiveness. So many mistakes are made because people feel pressured to speak quickly or act immediately. But when you embrace silence, you free yourself from that pressure. You give yourself permission to think deeply and thoroughly. And with that, your actions carry more weight. They are more intentional, more effective, and often more respected. You gain insight and intuition through observation, and silence is the gateway to both. When you're quiet, you're not just refraining from speaking, you're tuning into the world around you in a deeper, more intentional way. Observation allows you to notice the subtleties, the shift in someone's tone, the hesitation in their words, the contradiction between what they say and what they do. These are the cues that people who are constantly talking tend to miss because they're too focused on their own voice to truly see or hear what's happening around them. Insight doesn't come from being loud or always having an answer. It comes from understanding the unspoken. And that understanding is born in silence. When you're not trying to fill the space with words, you become more attuned to your surroundings and to people. You notice the dynamics in a room. You sense tension that others overlook. You recognize patterns in behavior, and you begin to anticipate outcomes. This kind of awareness isn't taught. It's cultivated through stillness and observation over time. Intuition, often described as a gut feeling or inner knowing, also becomes sharper when you're silent. Because when you stop trying to overanalyze everything with logic and let your senses absorb the moment, you begin to feel things more deeply. You pick up on energy, mood, and intention without needing them explained. That quiet voice inside you, the one that's often drowned out by noise and distraction, begins to speak more clearly. And the more you listen to it, the more accurate and reliable it becomes. Through silence and observation, you also develop emotional intelligence. You start to recognize not only how others are feeling, but why. And that allows you to respond to people with empathy and understanding instead of judgment or reaction. You become more patient, more perceptive, and more strategic in how you interact with the world. You start making decisions not just based on surface-level facts, but in a much deeper sense of awareness. Silence is a strategy. Your next move becomes more calculated, more intentional, and far more effective when it comes from a place of stillness. In a world that encourages fast responses and impulsive action, silence becomes your advantage. It allows you to pause, observe, and think 3 steps ahead, while everyone else is caught in the urgency of the moment. When you're silent, you're not inactive. You're prepared. You're watching, studying the terrain, understanding the players, and positioning yourself wisely before making a move. Strategic silence is not about withholding for the sake of being mysterious. It's about choosing the right moment to speak, the right words to say, and the most impactful way to act. When you wait, when you don't reveal your intentions too soon, you keep your leverage. You don't give others the chance to prepare for your next step, because they can't read what you haven't shown. This kind of silence makes your actions more powerful when they finally arrive. They're not random, they're deliberate, and they land with more weight. Think about how a chess player moves. They don't rush, they calculate. Each decision is made after considering multiple angles, anticipating the opponent's response, and thinking several moves ahead. The same is true in life. Silence gives you time to strategize, to weigh the pros and cons, to reflect on whether your action serves your long-term goals or just your short-term emotions. It's the difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. When you're silent, you also remove distractions. You stop feeding into noise, drama, and unnecessary conversations. This clarity helps you focus entirely on what matters. And in that focus, you refine your approach. You become more precise, more disciplined, and more effective. Strategy isn't just about action, it's about timing. And silence is what gives you the patience to wait for the right moment instead of the first moment. Energy is one of the most valuable resources we have, and silence helps you protect it. Every time you engage in unnecessary arguments, try to prove yourself, or respond to negativity, you're spending energy, emotional, mental, and even physical, Over time, this constant expenditure can leave you drained, distracted, and disconnected from your goals. But when you choose silence, you make a conscious decision to conserve that energy, to redirect it towards something that actually builds you rather than breaks you. Silence is a boundary. It says, I don't need to waste my energy convincing you, explaining myself to you, or fighting battles that don't matter. It shields you from the emotional chaos that comes with reacting to everything and everyone. Not every comment deserves a reply, not every opinion needs to be corrected, and not every misunderstanding requires your involvement. When you remain silent in these moments, you're not being passive, you're being protective. You're guarding your energy like the precious resource it is. People who understand the value of silence know that their energy is best invested in growth, learning, healing, and creating. They don't allow their focus to be hijacked by meaningless distractions. Instead of pouring their emotions into arguments or defenses, they channel it into things that truly matter. Whether it's pursuing their goals, deepening their self-awareness, or simply enjoying peace of mind. Silence also helps you stay grounded. When you're quiet, you're able to stay connected to your center rather than being pulled into the emotional roller coasters of others. You don't get tossed around by external chaos because your internal state is calm, focused, and preserved. This kind of presence is powerful. It allows you to show up fully for the things that deserve you while gracefully walking away from the things that don't. When you stop giving your energy to things that deplete you, you begin to notice how much more you have to give to the things that uplift you. You start to operate from a place of fullness instead of fatigue, and that shift alone can elevate every part of your life. Peace comes from within, and silence nurtures that peace in ways that words and noise never can. In a world that constantly demands your attention, that bombards you with notifications, opinions, and expectations, silence becomes a sacred retreat. It allows you to step away from the chaos and reconnect with yourself. When you choose to be silent, you're not just avoiding conversation, you're creating space to hear your own thoughts, to breathe, to feel, and to simply be. This space is where inner peace begins to grow. Inner peace isn't found in achievements, possessions, or recognition. It's found in the quiet moments. We are not trying to impress, prove, or perform. It's the stillness that exists when your mind is no longer racing to keep up with the world around you. Silence helps you detach from external validation and tune into what truly matters to you. It's in those moments of silence that you begin to realize what's important and what's simply noise. Peace also means emotional stability. The ability to remain calm even when things don't go your way. Silence strengthens that stability. It teaches you how to sit with discomfort without immediately reacting. It shows you that you don't need to respond to every situation and that many problems resolve themselves without your interference. As you spend more time in silence, you begin to build a deep reservoir of calm within you, one that you can return to even when the world feels loud and overwhelming. In silence, you also start to hear the quiet voice of your intuition. You begin to understand yourself more, what you need, what you fear, what you value. This self-awareness leads to self-acceptance, and that acceptance is the foundation of peace. You're no longer fighting who you are or trying to be someone else to please others. You become comfortable in your own presence, and that comfort becomes a source of strength. The more you practice silence, the more you realize that peace is not something you chase, it's something you uncover within yourself. It's always been there, beneath the noise and the pressure, waiting for you to be still enough to find it. Let your success make the noise. In a world where everyone is shouting to be noticed, where people are constantly trying to prove their worth through words, actions, and attention-seeking behaviors, true success is the quietest form of power. Success that comes from constant self-promotion, from boasting about achievements, or from seeking validation often feels hollow because it relies on external approval rather than internal fulfillment. True success, the kind that leaves a lasting impact, doesn't need to be loudly proclaimed. It speaks for itself through results. When you focus on achieving rather than impressing, your actions become the loudest statement you can make. The quietest people often have the most to offer because their energy is directed inward, toward improvement, mastery, and the pursuit of excellence, rather than outward toward convincing others of their worth. They know that success isn't about telling others how great you are, it's about showing them through what you accomplish. And when you accomplish great things, people take notice without you having to say a word. There is a deep power in letting your work, your character, and your achievements speak for themselves. Success achieved this way doesn't need constant validation or applause. It stands on its own. This kind of success is enduring because it's rooted in integrity, consistency, and a commitment to doing your best, regardless of whether anyone is watching or applauding, right? Is the quiet achiever, the person who focuses on their craft, who leaves a lasting legacy because their contributions speak louder than any self-promotion could. When you allow your success to speak for itself, you also attract the right kind of attention. People are drawn to those who are quietly confident, who don't need to announce their worth because their actions make it clear. You gain respect not because you ask for it, but because you've earned it. Your value isn't determined by how loudly you announce your achievements, but by the substance and impact of those achievements over time. So instead of using words to prove yourself, let your results do the talking. Let your success create a ripple effect that inspires others to listen, learn, and follow your example. And in the process, you'll realize that the most powerful statement you can make is the one that requires no words at all. The loudest lessons are often learned in the quietest moments. In the rush of life, we often overlook the small, seemingly insignificant moments that hold the most valuable lessons. It's easy to think that important lessons come from grand, dramatic events, moments of crisis, triumph, or intense conflict. But in reality, the most profound lessons are often learned when things slow down, when the noise fades away, and when we are left alone with our thoughts and reflections. In silence, we are given the space to process our experiences, to reflect on our actions, and to understand our own motivations. These quiet moments of introspection allow us to learn from both our successes and our mistakes in ways that we might miss when we are caught up in the external chaos of the world. We learn to listen to our inner voice, the one that speaks the truth we sometimes ignore in the midst of our busy lives. The quiet moments are when we truly understand the depth of our experiences. We may think we've learned something from an event when it happens, but it's only when we have the time and space to process it in silence that we gain real insight. For example, a failure might initially seem like a setback, but in the stillness of reflection, we realize that it was an invaluable lesson in resilience, growth, or humility. These realizations only come when we stop trying to force answers and allow ourselves to sit with the experience long enough to understand its true meaning. Silence also helps us distill wisdom from the noise of the world. We are constantly bombarded with advice, opinions, and information, but much of it is clutter that distracts us from what truly matters. In silence, we strip away the unnecessary noise and get to the heart of the matter. We begin to see the core truths that guide us toward a better version of ourselves. We understand that not everything requires action or a reaction. Some things simply need to be observed, reflected upon, and learned from. By embracing silence, we also learn to trust ourselves more. We become more in tune with our thoughts and feelings, and in doing so, we develop a deeper understanding of what we truly want, what we truly need, and how we can best navigate the complexities of life. The loudest lessons are often the ones that come without fanfare, and the silence we cultivate allows us to hear them clearly. Silence fosters self-discipline. And in a world that constantly tempts us with distractions, maintaining discipline is more important than ever. The ability to remain silent, especially when your emotions or external pressures might push you to react, is a powerful form of self-control. It's easy to be swayed by the noise around us, whether it's the drama of social media, the pressures of keeping up with others, or the urge to jump into every conversation and every situation that arises. A true self-discipline is about knowing when to step back, when to be silent, and when to reserve your energy and attention for things that truly matter. Self-discipline isn't just about saying no to the external distractions. It's also about saying no to your own impulses. Every time you choose silence over reacting, you strengthen your ability to control your impulses. It's a practice of restraint, understanding that not every situation demands a response, and not every emotion needs to be acted upon immediately. Over time, this kind of restraint builds mental and emotional fortitude, allowing you to respond thoughtfully and with purpose, rather than reacting impulsively and with regret. In moments of silence, we also learn patience, another key element of self-discipline. In a society that values instant gratification, the ability to remain silent and wait, to not immediately speak or act, is a rare and invaluable skill. Silence teaches us the art of waiting for the right moment, of pausing long enough to gather our thoughts and assess the situation before making a move. This patience is not passive, it's active and intentional. It's the discipline of holding back, of staying grounded and present, while the world around you may be urging you to hurry or react. Choosing silence also means resisting the urge to control everything around you. We live in a world where everyone seems to have an opinion, and there's a constant pressure to have a say in everything. But silence teaches us that we don't need to control every conversation or situation. Sometimes, the most disciplined thing you can do is let go of the need to influence, direct, or dominate. You allow others the space to speak, to act, and to make their own decisions, while you focus on maintaining your own peace and clarity. Ultimately, the discipline of silence strengthens not just your ability to control your responses, but your ability to control your entire life. It teaches you that you don't need to engage with every thought, every feeling, or every situation in order to be successful. You learn to be selective with where you invest your energy and attention, and this selective engagement is where true self-discipline thrives. The more you practice silence, the more you realize that you have the power to choose when and how to engage, and when to remain silent, thus preserving your energy and focusing on what's truly important. In conclusion, silence is not a void. It's a space filled with immense power, growth, and clarity. It's a tool that, when embraced, can lead to deeper self-awareness, stronger relationships, greater peace, and more impactful success. In a world that thrives on noise and distraction, the ability to be silent, to listen, to think, and to act with intention is what sets the truly wise apart. Remember, sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful thing you can do. So let us choose silence not as a retreat, but as a strategic decision to foster wisdom, clarity, and peace in our lives. Let us learn to speak less, observe more, and allow our actions to speak louder than our words. The world will hear you, not because you shouted, but because you lived with purpose.